Hi, and welcome to Conversations with B'nai B'rith. I'm CEO Dan Mariaschin. 1 million Americans live with Parkinson's disease, and for many of them, the involuntary tremors that come with this condition can make even the simplest daily tasks, writing their signature, holding a cup of coffee, or getting dressed in the morning, feel impossible. But what if there was a way to treat these tremors without surgery, without incisions, and without implants? Today, we're exploring medical technology that offers new options for patients with these debilitating tremors. We're joined by Dr. Arjun Desai, Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer at Insightec, the Israeli-based medical technology company behind a groundbreaking focused ultrasound treatment. We'll also hear from Spencer Enslein, a patient with Parkinson's disease who underwent the treatment, and his wife, Jenny Enslein, who has been by his side throughout the journey and has become an advocate in her own right. In July, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved Insightec's X-Blake Neuro platform to treat both sides of the brain in stages for people with advanced Parkinson's. The first time focused ultrasound has been cleared for this kind of procedure. Focused ultrasound is an incisionless treatment that uses MRI-guided sound waves to precisely target specific areas in the brain that cause tremors. Unlike traditional surgical approaches, there are no incisions and no implants. Patients are able to go home the same day. For those who haven't found relief from traditional medications, this procedure is another important new option worth exploring. Essential tremor, similar to Parkinson's, is a progressive neurological movement disorder that causes involuntary shaking, most often of the hands and the arms, though it can also affect the head, voice, and other parts of the body. The condition can significantly impact daily activities and quality of life. Over 40% of patients say it affects their ability to socialize and continue their hobbies. Long-term follow-up from Insightec's clinical trials revealed that patients showed an average 73% improvement in tremor severity 5 years after treatment. Notably, English screenwriter and acclaimed creator of Downton Abbey, Julian Fellowes, credits the treatment with helping him regain his handwriting after more than a decade of struggling with essential tremor, calling it life-changing. But before we get into our conversation, a quick reminder: if you enjoy this program, subscribe to Conversations with B'nai B'rith wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch all of our past episodes and follow us on Facebook to stay updated with all of our latest content. Dr. Desai is a Stanford-trained physician who has built his career at the intersection of clinical medicine and medical technology innovation. Before joining Insightec, he served as Global Vice President of External Innovation for Johnson & Johnson, where he managed more than 500 early-stage medical device and pharmaceutical assets. At Insightec, he focuses on expanding access to focused ultrasound therapeutics, particularly in neuroscience. He's a frequent contributor to Forbes Healthcare and has been featured in various outlets from CNN to the BBC. When Spencer Enslein's Parkinson's-related tremor began severely limiting his daily activities, he and his wife Jenny traveled to the University of Virginia, where he was treated by Dr. Jeff Elias using focused ultrasound. Since then, Spencer and Jenny have become strong advocates for Parkinson's awareness and the patient community, sharing their story to give hope to others facing similar challenges. The development of this technology reflects a broader trend in medical innovation. Insightec is based in Haifa, Israel, and in Florida. And in Israel, of course, a country that has become a leader in medical technology, with innovations now helping patients around the world. Dr. Desai, Spencer, Jenny, welcome to the podcast, and thank you all for joining me today.
Thank you, Dan.
So we'll start with Dr. Desai. Why don't you begin by telling us a bit about Insightec as a company and the impact that essential tremor and Parkinson's disease is having on patients like Spencer?
Thanks, Dan. First and foremost, I just want to thank B'nai B'rith for having me today to share this story, and probably most importantly, thank Jenny and Spencer for having the courage several years ago to reach out. It goes one layer deeper for me. Spencer and Jenny are, considered loved ones for my wife and I. So we take it even more personally. This is one of the most rewarding things as an entrepreneur and innovator we can ever do, is to help people, certainly the people closest to us. So it's a total privilege for me to be here today speaking about this process. But Insightec is a remarkable company, and it takes a remarkable company and culture to create and innovate and disrupt, a current trend in medicine where you see a big unmet need. And I think that was the vision decades ago, when the concept of taking ultrasonic energy through the skull and into the brain, not only to do it, but to do it therapeutically so you could have an outcome that is durable and help people, was really imagined. And the reason that we thought about this and built the technology and overcame the physics of moving sound through an MR imaging bay into the skull beyond the deep brain, and then focalizing it so that you could create heat and energy to actually change the outcome of the neuronal interface that's causing a movement disorder like a Parkinson's related tremor or a central tremor, was because there's a huge unmet need. You said it, there's more than 1 million people in the US, 10 million worldwide with Parkinson's. There's almost quadruple that with essential tremor. And between medication, which most break through, to deep implanted surgery, there really was no solution. And for us, it was really important to try to serve this category of people who become disabled. And the most heartbreaking thing is when there is a disablement that becomes an accommodation, and somebody loses their ability to socially interact with their friends, their family, their job. And it's those social dismemberments that become even more disabling than the disease itself. And they can be isolating, they become depressive, they become anxiety ridden. And if you can give somebody their movement back, you can change all of that. And it takes advocacy. Jenny is one of the best in the game that I've ever met. It takes self improvement and self worth. Spencer came ready to change. And it takes a technology that can offer hope. And Insightec, through the revolutionary, physics, technology, R&D, and clinical development, was able to show that this isn't only an acute, immediate effect, but one that is durable several years out. And we did that in the highest level of evidence generation through global randomized controlled trials, and demonstrating globally across all patient populations that we could take energy, a source that is incisionless, as you so accurately described. We can take it into a surgical environment where otherwise you need to cut, implant, have battery packs that are tunneled into the chest. We can obviate the need for all of that by the personalization and precision of image-based targeting to the exact structure in your brain that is causing the dysfunction. And probably most interestingly, Dan, is we can do it in real time. So while a patient like Spencer is on the table, we can engage and interact with them and actually watch the disablement evaporate, go away. And that gives us the confidence, the efficacy, and probably most importantly, the safety to be able to bring this to a very broad group of people worldwide and really make a difference and really help.
This is really way beyond more traditional surgical approaches such as deep brain stimulation or gamma knife procedures, correct?
Yeah, I think that these are all complementary to some extent. Deep brain stimulation in and of itself is an amazing technology to be able to modulate the electricity of a nucleus in your brain. However, it's highly invasive, and that comes with risk. And most people honestly would rather live with their disablement than go through an open brain surgery with an implantable electrode. Now, there's always a group of people where that's going to be a great solution. And so we actually look to be complementary and adjunctive. We just saw this huge gap where there was no solution. And so we like to offer this as something that could be first line, and many countries around the world, this is standard of care. And that it can be a solution for folks that are looking for various different ways to help their movement disorders. And these technologies, have all evolved out of a need state. They all find their best places for patients. And we hope to continue to develop the evidence to show that. In essential tremor, we feel like we've made a really great impact. And in Parkinson's, we're starting to grow with our ability to now treat bilaterally, as you suggested with our most recent approval.
So, Spencer, I'm curious to hear about your personal story after being diagnosed with Parkinson's. What was life like before this treatment? And how was the disease affecting your day-to-day life? Jenny, feel free to jump in on this Very seminal question.
After I got diagnosed, it was just a typical do more exercise, doctor taking some medications to help with the tremors. And as the years progressed, the tremors got to the point where I'm a left-handed dominant person. I couldn't control my left arm. I couldn't eat without spilling food. I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't shave. I couldn't cook. And I love to cook. And it just disrupted my whole life. And when I came upon this procedure, which Jenny found, amazingly enough, on CBS Good Morning, they did a story on it.
You're talking about rock steady boxing now, Spence.
But Jenny, let me ask you a question.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, no, I just want to ask you a question. So this was on CBS this morning.
CBS on the morning was the rock steady boxing.
It just happened that day you were watching. I mean, you were fortunate to be watching that day.
So my Machetunim called me and says, you must watch this piece on CBS Sunday morning. It's about a boxing program for Parkinson's patients. And Spencer, it was on a Sunday. He happened to be golfing with JJ's father-in-law that Sunday. And I watched the show and I thought to myself, this is exactly what I'm looking for, because I wanted to find something beyond medication. I wanted to find more alternative options beyond medication. But to go back to your question with Spencer, in 2020, which was 8 years after Spencer was diagnosed, we have been doing a lot of alternative therapies, hyperbaric oxygen, rock steady boxing, acupuncture. And what happened in 2020? COVID hit. So all these centers closed because of COVID. So Spencer was not able to continue with his weekly routines of alternative therapies. The tremors got worse, and we consulted with Dr. Carlos Singer, his neurologist. He's a movement disorder director at University of Miami. And he actually put him on medication for the first time in 8 years, carbidopa, levodopa, which was cinnamon, which is the actually dopamine medication, to treat the tremors, primarily his left hand and left arm. And the medication was not helping at all. So Dr. Singer suggested to look into focused ultrasound because I was not a fan of deep brain stimulation. I found it to be very invasive. The more I researched focused ultrasound, the more it sounded to me like something that would be beneficial for Spencer. We contacted Dr. Elias's office in Virginia. The reason we reached out to him is because we saw that it was the doctor that Insightec used for the FDA approval, and we wanted to use the same doctor that Insightec had used. There was a 2-year wait. So I decided to go into the Insightec website and research because that's just my MO. And I find that who is one of the chief officers, nobody other than Dr. Desai, who happens to be a personal friend of ours. So it took a phone call to JJ and said, Spencer would like to explore the procedure. And a 2-year wait became a 2-month wait. Dr. Elias contacted us. We had a telehealth because he has to see that the patient is a candidate. The neurologist has to do a examination and detail to Dr. Elias. Dr. Singer was very thorough, and Dr. Elias felt that Spencer was in fact a candidate. There was one more requirement. He needed to do a CT scan of the brain to make sure that there was not too much density of the brain, and luckily Spencer is not too dense. And he qualified. It's a very specific CT scan that we were able to have performed at University of Miami Hospital. And the next thing we knew was our trip to Virginia. all thanks to Dr. Desai, to JJ that made it happen. And Spencer can tell you more about the day of the procedure, but it was a life changer.
Yeah, Spencer, walk us through your experience on the day of your procedure at the University of Virginia with Dr. Elias.
The day of the procedure, I went to the facility where the MRI machine was, and where they had the focused ultrasound set up. The first thing they did was shave my head. After they shaved my head, they did that because they didn't want any hair particles to disrupt the ultrasound waves when they're ready to zap me. They put a crown on me, which was not invasive to the skull, but it was solidified with the skull, to put an ice bath on my head because of the heat from the ultrasound, to make it more
Contrast.
manageable when the procedure was being done. Then after they got that whole thing set, they put me in a MRI machine, lightly sedated, because I was in there for, I think, about 45 minutes. They zapped me once. When they found the spot, they were looking forward to see my reaction, had me draw with my arm. They zapped me a second time to refine and put the position, and had me draw again. And the third time was the final one that they were able to, I guess, cauterize the cells that were causing the tremors. After they got me out of the machine, I was sitting in a wheelchair in the recovery area. I asked for something to drink, and I took it in my left arm.
He gets very emotional.
Yeah.
He asked for a drink and they gave him a can of juice, and he was sitting in a wheelchair holding the can. And as he was drinking, I was already back because they allowed me to document everything. And I said, time out. He's not shaking. And it's an immediate outcome. I would like, Spencer, for you to stretch your arm and show Dan what it was like, what your arm was like, and what it's like now. If you can show them what it was like.
My arm was like this. I don't think the camera's on me right now.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
And after the procedure, my arm was like this.
Wow. So that was the immediate aftermath was the can. But tell us about what happened after the treatment. How quickly did you begin to notice changes over time, and what impact did it have on your daily life?
The biggest change was the tremors on the left side of my body stopped immediately. And been that way, except for very rare occasions where I get highly anxious. I may tremor a little bit. The other impact is there was a side effect that I lost some of my ability of balance. That has not gone away. It's manageable. And as people said to me, would you do it again? Knowing that your balance is going to be off a little bit. And my answer is 100 times out of 100, without a doubt. It's the most life-changing thing that I had happen to me since the diagnosis of Parkinson.
Well, quality of life is so important to everybody, regardless of your health condition, but especially when you had this condition that prevented you from even thinking about what we call quality of life, is really something. Jenny, you were going to say something?
Yes, I wanted to give you a little background. Before the procedure, when we met with Dr. Elias on telehealth and with his nurse, we were brought up to date to the fact that there might be a side effect affecting his balance, given that he's a Parkinson's patient, because the focused ultrasound was primarily for essential tremor patients who do not have a balance issue. Being a Parkinson's patient, you have the tremors additionally to the balance issue. So after the procedure, we had continuous follow-ups by telehealth and by phone with Dr. Elias and his team. The first follow-up was a month later, asking Spencer how his balance was doing, and it was still affected. The next follow-up was maybe 3 months into the procedure, then 6 months into the procedure, and a year into the procedure. And the balance issue was always present. But we are aware that there are other patients who recover the balance after the procedure. And I'm not sure if they are necessarily Parkinson's patients or not.
So I will say that from the time that the procedure occurred till now, the balance issue got more manageable as time went by. Now it's 5 years later, and it's becoming a little bit more of an issue right now. But I had quite a few years where I was easily maintainable with the balance issue.
I
Now
think his Parkinson's is progressing as well, so that contributes to that.
Dr. Desai, the FDA approved Insightec's Exablate Neuro platform in June. How does this change the future of focused ultrasounds for patients? And from a physician and innovation perspective, what excites you most about where all of this is headed? Because this is a tremendous advance, but what's in the future?
Yeah, Dan, thank you. There's so many different ways to answer your question. I first want to sort of just touch on some of the elements we just heard and listening to Jenny and Spencer that are so emblematic of this Parkinson's patient community. And it's the offensive nature of the patient and the caregiver. And you're seeing that beautiful representation here of, really fighting for all the right information, understanding, pushing the limits of what's possible. This is a multimodal disease, and you have to come at it with nutrition and rock steady boxing and medication and understand what works for you or not. And focused ultrasound to me represents the ultimate nexus of precision and personalization, bringing a technology forward, the physics of what we can do. We can treat Spencer for Spencer. It's not a therapy that's a blanket statement across everybody's disease state treated the same. We understand what's causing Spencer's tremor is different than what might be causing, elements of rigidity or slow movement or dyskinesia, erratic movement, or tremor in another Parkinson's patient. And for me, the ability to take something as precise as focused ultrasound, a sound wave, we can get to 0.3 millimeters of latitude and longitudinal directional precision. And that means that we can get deep into midline and lateral structures of the brain and test and understand what's functionally happening when we put the sound wave to that structure. And, the second element that I'd like to highlight is the emotion of it. And you saw Spencer's reaction, and I had to kind of hold myself based off of the reaction that I was having. But the first time I ever saw a procedure with focused ultrasound, the whole room's crying. The patient, the caregiver, the physicians, because you see somebody who's been living with a disablement for years. And the social elements of that disablement are as profound as the functional elements. And if you can give somebody that confidence back, that movement back, that precision back, it changes their whole life. And you see all of that wrapped up into simply holding a styrofoam cup with some 7-Up in it and them not believing it. Their brain is telling them that's not your hand, but their hand is moving to their mouth slowly and steadily without shaking or spilling. And, I sat in front of a room just a few weeks ago, something we call the Focus Forward Neuro Innovator Summit. And it was about 200 practicing physicians and centers from around the US that are using focused ultrasound. And that emotion carries through in everything that everybody talks about. It's the little things that make the biggest differences. And we're most proud of being able to do that. But, the thing that I look forward to is you mentioned the June approval. This is just the next step in our ability to help folks. In June, we got our approval for a bilateral therapy to treat Parkinson's using a novel tract called the pallital-thalamic tract, PTT. And that is an area of the brain that really only focused ultrasound can effectively get to because it's an outflow tract from a large nucleus in the brain. And we picked that area because it's the cross section of the most safe and efficacious target in the brain to take on all cardinal symptoms of Parkinson's: the slowness, the rigidity, the erratic movement, and the tremor, and truly bring forward a more comprehensive solution. And we had to be incredibly detail oriented in our study because no non-invasive therapy has been able to treat bilaterally in the brain. There's been a lot of safety risks associated with that can be very cataclysmic for an outcome of a patient. And we thought with the precision and the safety and the real-time image guidance that we have, we could make a difference. And we, in fact, showed that and proved it and got the unanimous consent from the FDA for our approval. And we're now able to offer a more comprehensive solution. So to answer your question, it's the precision and personalization that a technology that evolves over time can be a one-time, every-time treatment for the people that we have in front of us, and that we can do right and do best by that person and their disease, and make sure that we're always being very conscientious of how to treat the right disease at the right time for the right person. And there's really no other technology I've been involved with in my entire career that has this tunability, that can use imaging and precision and constantly better itself. This is, akin to the machine learning and AI models that we're all more accustomed to. Our technology is constantly improving based off of all of the inputs that it gets on every patient and every treatment. And it's very rare to have a technology in medicine that can do that. And so it's a huge privilege to be at Insightec amongst the clinical and engineering folks that are making this a reality, and to be able to sit with folks like Jenny and Spencer and watch the outcome and just be a part of that and be a part of their lives.
Amen.
So Spencer, go ahead, Jenny. Go ahead.
I wanted to just add to JJ's, another important factor was in 2020, while we were programming and scheduling, Medicare approved the procedure. So Spencer's procedure was fully covered by Medicare.
So I want to follow up with that because it is related. My next question to Dr. Desai is, Spencer had his procedure done at University of Virginia. How important are collaborations with hospitals and regulators and patient advocates, such as Jenny and Spencer, in expanding access to this treatment?
You can't understate how important it is. And it's every element you just talked about. You can't limit yourself to thinking that it's just one single element. Getting a clinical trial approved is literally step one of like 14 steps to actually make sure that a patient can see that treatment and benefit from it and have it covered under their health insurance. And it's patient advocates, it's societies that represent both patients and physicians. It's the hospitals that are early adopters and are willing to do the work. Jeff Elias and UVA were seminal in clarifying that this technology is safe and effective. And Jeff was the lead author in our New England Journal paper that really brought life to this first part of the equation. And just to give you an example, Dan, the last thing I wanted to do was have to see Jenny and Spencer travel out of state to get this procedure. And it's something we worked hard on every day for the last several years, was to make sure that every state and every city and every public and every private insurer covered this. And we did our part by generating the evidence and working in, relentless advocacy alongside all the elements that you talked about. But it took us 2 years to make sure that the folks in Florida and South Florida had access to this. And sure enough, once we did, now there's dozens of centers all over the state, more than 200 worldwide, that are treating and give people the opportunity from the comfort of their own homes to drive, get this procedure for 2 hours, hang out in a hospital, drink some 7-Up out of a styrofoam cup, and come back home. And that's a really big change and arc shift from requiring a 3-day hospital stay for an open surgical procedure The more that we can be conscientious of what's right for patients, the more that we'll advance access. And at the end of the day, we're nothing without access to patients. And so the regulators, the governing bodies, the insurers, the patient advocates, the societies, and, folks like us that make the technology have to just work hand in hand, even before we even start a clinical trial, to answer all the questions that everybody needs. So when we do get that approval, we can bring it forward to patients. And we're in that fight right now with our most recent FDA approval, is to just work as hard as we can to make sure that patients have access to it and try to shorten those timelines every time we go to bat with a new approval.
Well, Spencer and Jenny, both of you have become advocates for Parkinson's disease awareness. What message do you want other patients and families who may be viewing this today to take away from your experience? Jenny?
I'll go first. My purpose in sharing is not only because sharing is caring, but I want people to understand that there is hope and that there is options. And focused ultrasound to me was love at first sight. The fact that it's a non-invasive procedure and that it's now affordable because it's covered by insurance. It's available everywhere. I preach it, I share it, and I use my husband as proof that it is not only an easy procedure to go through, there's not much prep, you can be emotionally ready for it, but that there's no significant side effect, and if it's a life changer. And it's not just the physical change, but like JJ said, your head is telling you your hand is moving or not moving, but it is. It just changed Spencer's perspective, and I think it gave him a sense of not being defined by his tremors, which is what I always tell him, that Parkinson's is not going to define him. And that's the message that I like to share with other Parkinson's patients, not to let the disease define who you are.
Spencer?
The main thing that I tell people, and that I'd like to tell people, is it's not for everyone, but it's definitely worth looking into. I'm physical proof of the benefits of the procedure, that they shouldn't be afraid, that it's not invasive, as we discussed, and to do nothing or to go into other areas may or may not be the best thing for somebody, but this is something they definitely have to look at. It's definitely changed my life for the better. But I'm also someone who doesn't just give up at the drop of a stick. I fight through things, I create things, and with my wife at my side, I couldn't have asked for a better partner. And
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I should say that Jenny is an activist in the Jewish community, and a very important one in the Miami area. And she invited me down to give a speech a few months ago, and I learned about your story. And when I saw with my own eyes exactly the proof of how this works in a very real way, I felt that really we had to tell Spencer, we had to tell your story to help others. And I know that Jenny has really been very, very active in terms of advocating for not only for this particular procedure, but for patients and their families. It's really so important. I want to ask both of you before we conclude, and I'm going to follow up with a question for Dr. Desai at the end. What does it mean for both of you as patient and physician? Dr. Desai has joined in to see an Israeli innovation making such a profound difference in people's lives worldwide. Israel is a startup nation. It's become a hub for global healthcare technology and other kinds of technologies, of course, AI and other things. So, Jenny, what do you say to that? It's so important that there is a connection here to Israel.
One of the most exciting things about finding out about Insightec for me personally was the fact that it was an Israeli innovation. We have spent too much time, especially in the past 2 years. Tomorrow is October 7th, and it will be 2 years since the massacre, which we have spent demonizing Israel, criticizing Israel, and not giving Israel the value that it has and what it contributes to life and to the world. And not only are we a light unto the nations, but the need to highlight and showcase how much we all need Israel. And if this is a way to help that message, because Insightec is an Israeli company, then kol hakavod.
Dr. Desai, you've worked in the field and for some very important companies and institutions, and I'd be interested in your take on the importance of Israel as a hub for medical technology.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I like to say that kind of saying Israeli innovation is almost duplicative at this point. I hadn't been to Israel prior to being able to help lead Insightec, and I remember my first visit over there. There's an innovative spirit in everything, you know, from agriculture to water to the city infrastructure to the community, and medicine is just a de facto benefit of that. And I get to see it firsthand because of the brilliant team that we have in Haifa, and in Tel Aviv itself with our software team. You know, it's just a beautiful community. You can feel the energy in the earth when you're in Israel, and you can feel that energy subsist across the people that live there. And then, you know, additive to that within the Jewish community, there's such a warmth and love that wants to be spread that people really get to live that in their day-to-day job, and it drives iterative growth in everything we do. It's one of these intangible elements that's hard to describe and almost harder to replicate in a place outside of Israel. If when you're really trying to converge things like energy and physics and medicine all together, it takes this type of just relentless attitude and spirit to do it. And we get to work with folks like the Technion University, which we're very close to physically and geographically, but disproportionately have, you know, the brilliant minds from that university in our company, and leading hospitals across Israel that pioneer our technology before we bring it out to the rest of the world. And so I feel so fortunate over the last nearly 7 years now, getting to truly understand, appreciate, and most importantly, be inspired on a daily basis by, you know, what it means to be an Israeli innovation company, and the love that manifests through everything that we do. And ultimately sitting across from folks like Jenny and Spencer and being a part of their story and a positive part is just the greatest reward that we all have. And I know that on behalf of my company, my whole company feels that when we get each and every one of those wins. And so it's a total inspiration, Dan. You know, so I have to pare it down to one word. And I look forward to the future because it's brighter than ever now of what's coming out of Israel to help benefit the world globally.
Dan, I want to
Go
add.
ahead, Jenny. I'm going to give you and Spencer the last word. So, Jenny, go ahead.
So this is my last word, and it's perfect because I like to follow up on JJ. So the beginning of the podcast, you asked me about how we found out about the procedure and so on. So it was recommended by Dr. Carlos Singer, who I happen to have great respect for. But the more I researched about it and the more I share it with people, family, friends, they all thought that I was crazy, that I would subject my husband to a procedure that affected his brain. And I said, I believe that there was a greater power, because you tell me the chances that when I research Insightec, I find that amongst the officers involved is JJ Desai. So the sign was all there. This is a Miami-based company that has a chief officer whose father-in-law plays golf with my husband and his poker buddy, whose grandfather was my father's partner in the races and with the horses. It was something much greater, and I followed my gut, and it was meant to be. And I say that JJ was our angel that was to solidify that this is something that needed to be done.
Spencer.
Charm is the fact that it's an Israeli company. Given everything Jenny just said, that was a bonus, a tremendous bonus. But I have one last thing to say to people who are listening to this with Parkinson's, that they can't just sit back and let Parkinson's rule their lives. They got to be proactive and fight, fight, fight. That's my last word.
Well, thank you all for speaking with me today and for sharing how this medical innovation has transformed Spencer's life and how it offers real hope to so many others living with Parkinson's and related conditions. It's been a pleasure talking with each of you, and Mazel Tov, Spencer, on your renewed health.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
And love you, Jenny.
JJ.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Conversations with B'nai B'rith. Thank you to Dr. Arjun Desai, Spencer Enslein, and Jenny Enslein for giving us an inside look at this remarkable medical breakthrough and the real-life impact that it's having on patients. Now, you can learn more about the future of focused ultrasound treatments at Insightec. I'm going to spell it, INSIGHTEC.com. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Share this episode with others, post about it on social media, and leave us a comment or a rating. And to stay updated, follow or subscribe to Conversations with B'nai B'rith wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook for more great content. We'll be back soon with more thoughtful conversations on Jewish history, culture, and issues that matter most to our community. Until then, I'm Dan Mariaschin. Thanks for listening, and take care.